Imagine being 15 years old and accidentally hacking into the Pentagon. No, this isn't a movie plot or some far-fetched Hollywood thriller. This really happened, and it changed cybersecurity forever. The story of Jonathan James is one that continues to send shockwaves through the digital world. A tale of curiosity turned catastrophic, of brilliance overshadowed by tragedy. If mind-blowing stories like this excite you, then buckle up, because we're diving deep into the wild, true story of the youngest person ever to hack into United States military systems. Jonathan James wasn't your typical teenager. While his peers were navigating the usual adolescent concerns of crushes, homework, and weekend plans, Jonathan was immersed in a completely different world. Born on December 12, 1983, in South Florida, he possessed an insatiable curiosity about computers and technology that would ultimately define his short but impactful life. From an early age, Jonathan displayed an exceptional aptitude for understanding complex systems. But unlike many gifted children who channel their talents through traditional academic routes, Jonathan was drawn to the shadowy realm of computer networks and digital exploration. His setup was far from impressive by today's standards. Jonathan didn't have access to cutting-edge technology or expensive equipment. Instead, he worked with an old, second-hand computer and a dial-up internet connection that crawled at speeds that would make modern users cringe. Yet with these humble tools and an unstoppable curiosity, he began teaching himself the intricacies of coding, network architecture, and system vulnerabilities. He spent countless hours studying programming languages, understanding how data flowed through networks, and learning the subtle art of finding weaknesses in digital systems. By the time Jonathan reached 14, he had already begun what he considered digital exploration. To him, infiltrating networks wasn't about malicious intent or criminal activity. He wasn't motivated by financial gain, personal vendetta, or the desire to cause harm. Instead, Jonathan viewed himself as a digital explorer, someone who pushed boundaries simply to see what lay beyond them. He was driven by the same curiosity that motivates scientists to peer deeper into space, or archaeologists to uncover ancient civilizations. The difference was that Jonathan's frontier was the vast, interconnected world of computer networks. His early forays into hacking were relatively modest affairs. Jonathan would probe small business networks, school systems, and local organizations, always careful to avoid causing damage or stealing sensitive information. He approached each system like a puzzle to be solved, a mystery to be unraveled. The thrill wasn't in the destination, but in the journey of discovery itself. However, as his skills grew more sophisticated and his confidence increased, Jonathan began setting his sights on increasingly complex and significant targets. The year 1999 marked a turning point in Jonathan's digital adventures. What started as casual exploration of various networks began to escalate dramatically as he moved from private businesses to more sensitive government systems. His progression wasn't planned or methodical in the traditional sense. Rather, it was the natural evolution of a curious mind, constantly seeking new challenges and more complex puzzles to solve. During this period, Jonathan successfully infiltrated several high-profile targets that would later make headlines around the world. He found vulnerabilities in Bell South's network infrastructure, gaining access to internal communications and system configurations. He also penetrated the Miami-Dade School District's computer systems, navigating through their digital architecture with the same ease that other teenagers might browse social media. But these intrusions, significant as they were, paled in comparison to what came next. Jonathan's most audacious and consequential hack began almost by accident. While exploring various government networks, he stumbled upon what appeared to be just another server. Using techniques he had perfected over months of practice, he deployed a packet sniffer, a relatively simple program designed to intercept and analyze data as it flows through a network. This tool allowed him to monitor usernames, passwords, and other sensitive information as government employees logged into their systems. What Jonathan didn't initially realize was that he had accessed a server belonging to the United States Department of Defense. Not just any Defense Department server, but one connected to the Pentagon itself. Using the credentials he had captured through his packet sniffing activities, Jonathan gained access to a Defense Threat Reduction Agency server, a system responsible for analyzing and responding to nuclear threats against the United States. The implications of this breach were staggering. Here was a teenager, working from his bedroom with second-hand equipment and a dial-up internet connection, who had gained unauthorized access to some of the most sensitive military infrastructure in the world. The Defense Threat Reduction Agency dealt with weapons of mass destruction, nuclear proliferation, and other threats to national security. The fact that their systems could be compromised by a curious teenager exposed vulnerabilities that sent shockwaves through the highest levels of government. But Jonathan's digital adventures didn't end with the Pentagon. His appetite for exploration led him to an even more prestigious target: the National Aeronautics and Space Administration. NASA, with its cutting-edge technology and groundbreaking research, represented the pinnacle of American scientific achievement. To Jonathan, it was simply another fascinating puzzle waiting to be solved. In 1999, NASA reported a major security breach that would later be traced directly to Jonathan's activities. He had successfully infiltrated their computer systems and downloaded source code related to the International Space Station software systems. This wasn't just any code. It was proprietary software valued at over $1.7 million, representing years of development work by some of the brightest minds in aerospace engineering. The breach forced NASA to take drastic action, recognizing the potential security implications and unsure of the full extent of the compromise. The agency made the unprecedented decision to shut down its computer systems for 3 weeks. This shutdown wasn't just an inconvenience. It was a massive disruption to ongoing research projects, mission planning, and international collaborations. The financial impact was immediate and substantial, with NASA reporting over $40,000 in direct damages from the incident. When later questioned about his motivations, Jonathan's response revealed the mindset that drove his actions. He explained that he was simply looking around, playing with the systems like they were puzzles to be solved. To him, the intrusion wasn't a criminal act, but an intellectual exercise. He was fascinated by the complexity of the systems, the elegance of the code, and the challenge of understanding how everything worked together. However, to federal agents and government officials, Jonathan's digital exploration represented something far more serious: a national security breach of unprecedented proportions. The gravity of Jonathan's actions couldn't remain hidden forever. In January 2000, the Federal Bureau of Investigation launched Operation Digital Storm, a comprehensive investigation designed to track down and prosecute the individual responsible for these high-profile. The operation represented a new frontier for law enforcement, as traditional investigative techniques had to be adapted for the digital age. Jonathan had been under surveillance for some time before the authorities made their move. FBI agents had been quietly gathering evidence, tracing digital footprints, and building a case that would stand up in court. The investigation was meticulous and thorough, involving cybersecurity experts, federal prosecutors, and multiple government agencies working in coordination. When the authorities finally acted, they did so with overwhelming force. A SWAT team descended on Jonathan's family home, treating the teenage hacker as a potential terrorist threat. The raid was swift and comprehensive, with agents seizing his computer, hard drives, floppy disks, and any other equipment that might contain evidence of his digital activities. For Jonathan's parents, the scene must have been surreal and terrifying, watching their son being treated as a dangerous criminal for activities they likely didn't fully understand. At just 16 years old, Jonathan James found himself at the center of a legal maelstrom that would define the rest of his short life. He was arrested and charged with multiple cybercrimes against the United States government, making him the first juvenile in American history to be convicted of hacking into U.S. military and NASA systems. The case set important legal precedents and established new frameworks for prosecuting cybercriminals, particularly young offenders. However, Jonathan's response to his arrest revealed much about his character and motivations. Rather than denying his actions or attempting to minimize his involvement, he chose to cooperate fully with authorities. He walked investigators through his methods, explaining exactly how he had penetrated each system and what vulnerabilities he had exploited. His cooperation wasn't just helpful, it was educational, providing government cybersecurity experts with invaluable insights into their own weaknesses. This cooperation likely contributed to the relatively lenient sentence Jonathan received. Instead of facing years in federal prison, he was sentenced to house arrest, probation, and a ban on recreational computer use. The court recognized that Jonathan wasn't a traditional criminal motivated by greed or malice, but rather a gifted young person whose curiosity had led him down a dangerous path. Despite avoiding prison time, the consequences of Jonathan's actions extended far beyond his legal sentence. His life was forever changed by his brief moment in the spotlight, and the aftermath would prove to be more challenging than the initial prosecution. The media attention was intense and often, with news outlets dubbing him the boy who hacked the Pentagon, and turning his story into a cautionary tale about the dangers of unsupervised internet access. The constant scrutiny took a significant toll on Jonathan's personal and professional life. Potential employers were hesitant to hire someone with his background, regardless of his obvious technical skills and talents. Friends and acquaintances began to distance themselves, unsure of how to relate to someone who had become a national news story. The normal process of growing up and establishing an adult identity became complicated by his notoriety and the ongoing suspicion that surrounded him. In 2007, Jonathan's name surfaced again in connection with another major cybersecurity incident, the TJX data breach, one of the largest credit card security breaches in history at that time. Compromised the personal information of over 45 million customers. The attack was sophisticated and well coordinated, involving multiple retail chains and resulting in millions of dollars in losses. When the Secret Service began investigating the TJX breach, Jonathan's name appeared on their list of potential suspects. This wasn't based on concrete evidence linking him to the crime, but rather on his past history and known capabilities. The mere fact that he had previously demonstrated the ability to penetrate secure systems made him a person of interest in virtually any major cybercrime investigation. Jonathan vehemently denied any involvement in the TJX breach, and no evidence was ever found connecting him to the attack. However, the renewed attention from law enforcement agencies created enormous stress and anxiety. He found himself once again under investigation, with agents questioning his activities and examining his digital footprints for any sign of criminal behavior. The pressure of constant suspicion and surveillance began to take its toll on Jonathan's mental health and overall well-being. He struggled with the realization that his teenage mistakes would likely follow him for the rest of his life, making it difficult to build a normal career or maintain healthy relationships. The weight of being perpetually viewed as a potential threat, regardless of his actual actions or intentions, became increasingly unbearable. On May 18, 2008, just days after federal agents had once again raided his home in connection with the TJX investigation, Jonathan James made a tragic and irreversible decision. At the age of 24, he died by suicide, leaving behind a letter that provided insight into his final thoughts and the pressures that had driven him to this desperate act. In his final message, Jonathan wrote about his loss of faith in the justice system and his belief that he had lost control over his own life and circumstances. He expressed the hope that his death might send a stronger message to the public about the treatment of individuals caught up in the cybersecurity apparatus. The letter revealed a young man who felt trapped by his past, unable to escape the shadow of his teenage actions, and convinced that he would never be allowed to live a normal life. Jonathan's death sent shockwaves through the cybersecurity community and raised important questions about how society treats young offenders, particularly those whose crimes are motivated by curiosity rather than malice. Many experts who had followed his case believed that he was innocent. Involvement in the TJX breach, and that his death represented a tragic failure of the system to distinguish between different types of cyber. The legacy of Jonathan James extends far beyond his individual story. His case became a watershed moment in cybersecurity history, highlighting both the vulnerabilities of critical government systems and the complex ethical questions surrounding digital exploration. Unlike many hackers who are motivated by financial gain or the desire to cause harm, Jonathan represented a different archetype. The curious explorer whose technical abilities outpaced his understanding of legal and social boundaries. Today, cybersecurity experts continue to cite Jonathan's case as both a cautionary tale and an example of how far human curiosity and determination can go. His story is taught in computer science ethics classes, where students grapple with questions about the responsibility that comes with technical knowledge and the importance of using skills constructively rather than destructively. The hacker community remembers Jonathan by his online handle, C0Murray, and his story has become part of the folklore of early internet culture. He demonstrated that even the most powerful and supposedly secure systems could be breached by a determined individual with sufficient knowledge and persistence. His exploits revealed that the line between genius and criminal is often drawn by legal definitions rather than intent or character. Jonathan's story also highlighted the need for better cybersecurity practices and more robust defense systems. His relatively simple techniques exposed fundamental weaknesses in government and corporate networks, leading to significant improvements in security protocols and monitoring systems. In many ways, his unauthorized penetration testing provided valuable lessons that helped strengthen the very systems he had compromised. The tragedy of Jonathan James lies not just in his early death, but in the lost potential of a brilliant young mind. Had his curiosity been channeled through legitimate means, he might have become a leading cybersecurity expert, helping to protect the same systems he once penetrated. Instead, his story serves as a reminder of the importance of providing appropriate outlets for technical curiosity and the need for more nuanced approaches to dealing with young offenders in the digital age. Jonathan James didn't set out to change history, but his actions had far-reaching consequences that continue to influence cybersecurity policy and practice today. He was the youngest person to hack the Pentagon, the teenager who forced NASA offline, and the young man whose story scared governments around the world into taking cybersecurity more seriously. His legacy is complex and multifaceted, encompassing both the dangers of unchecked digital exploration and the tragic consequences of a system that struggled to understand and appropriately respond to a new type of offender. In the end, Jonathan James left behind more than just a cautionary tale. He left a warning about the power of technology, the importance of understanding the human motivations behind cybercrime, and the need for compassion and wisdom in dealing with those whose curiosity leads them into dangerous territory. His story reminds us that behind every headline about cybersecurity breaches are real people with complex motivations, and that the line between hero and villain in the digital age is often thinner than we might like to believe. Jonathan James didn't mean to change history, but he did. The youngest person to hack the Pentagon, the kid who forced NASA offline, the teenager who scared the world, he left behind more than just a legacy. He left a warning. Like, subscribe, and follow UTAK Diaries for more stories of brilliance, danger, and mystery, where the truth is stranger than fiction.